Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this December 3rd, 2014 edition of Nightcast. We open up our story tonight with, remember not long ago there were a big typhoon in the Philippines. Well, tonight, Typhoon Hagupit is gathering strength in the western Pacific and could bring wind gusts of 140 miles per hour and a powerful storm surge to the Philippines over the weekend. But as BBC Weather's Darren Bett explains, the forecast track could change.
Hello there. The past few weeks have been fairly quiet in the Western Pacific, but we now have a powerful typhoon on the scene, shown clearly there on the satellite picture. The track is going to be crucial. We'll look at that in a moment, but it looks like it's churning towards the Philippines right now. Let's look at the starting conditions though, and on Wednesday it was already a strong category typhoon with maximum gusts of 130 miles an hour. Now to the official forecast track, and it takes it on a westerly steer towards the Philippines over the next few days, getting very close this weekend. Saturday and into Sunday may well have strengthened even further to a very strong typhoon with maximum gusts 140 miles an hour. Now, if it's taking this westerly steer, it's going to be heading into central parts of the Philippines, straight towards Tacloban, still recovering, of course, from Typhoon Haiyan over a year ago. Not mentioning winds, but some torrential rain from this system, and also some flooding from a significant storm surge. Now, the track is going to be crucial because of Tacloban in particular, because of making landfall. But there are alternatives. Some forecast models, one in particular from the United States, takes a different steer on approach to the Philippines. This is their alternative track, steering it away towards the north, so not actually making landfall. So on approach, there are some discrepancies between the models on their forecasting of the track and whether it will hit land or not. No doubt there will be some changes over the next few days. Certainly the track is one we're going to keep close because there could be, of course, some major impacts.
And friends, this next story also relates to that pale horse. Let's take a look quickly at our chart on the screen. You notice there are four colors on the first four columns of this chart, beginning with white, and we do have a story related to this first seal tonight, but these first four columns represent the first four seals from the book of Revelation. The first seal is depicted as a white horse, which Jesus Christ described in plain language as religious deception, false prophets, false Christ, deceivers, coming and saying that Jesus Christ indeed is the Christ, and yet not preaching, not delivering the message that Christ brought. The second seal is depicted in Revelation as a red horse, and Jesus Christ describes the activities of this horse as war and rumors of war and world war, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. The third seal is depicted as by a black horse that Jesus Christ described as scarcity of food, famine. And the fourth seal depicted in Revelation as a pale horse with a rider whose name is Death. And alongside or at the heels of this pale horse and its rider gallops along Hades, hell, the grave. And Jesus Christ described the primary activity of this horse as loimus, meaning disease epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt. But between the third and the fifth seal, Jesus Christ also said, and that leaves the position of the fourth seal, that at the same time is going to be happening seismic activity, seismic conditions, commotions in the air, gale force winds of all kinds, commotions on the ground. It gives the example in the Greek-English lexicons of earthquakes, and that's what the King James and many modern translations picked up on, and only that, although the word that Christ used, seismus, means more, means commotions in the air, on the ground, and he also said tereke, trouble, disturbances, troubled waters, literally and figuratively, and mobs, seditions, and figurates. But literally troubled waters, or seismus, that part of this fourth seal relates to that opening story, and the tereke, the disturbance, the trouble, the mobs, sedition, parts of that relates to our next story tonight, friends, which I gave you the introduction to this last night on last night's news. Out of today's news is this story as the opposition to Israel's prime minister, who has sacked his finance and justice ministers and declared he wants Parliament dissolved, triggering an early general election. I'll tell you what his opposition is doing in a moment, but Benjamin Netanyahu said Yair Lapid and Tzipi Livni had, quote, harshly attacked him, both himself and the coalition government. They harshly attacked both the prime minister and the coalition government. Mr. Netanyahu explained that he wanted an election 2 years early to win, quote, a clear mandate to lead Israel. Disagreements over a series of economic and political policies have strained relations within the coalition. During this report, friend, with Ben Bland, you will see the United States Secretary of State, John Kerry, appear and make a statement, and it'll end the video, short one, minute and a half, with him. Where do you think he's going to take his comments? I'm not going to spoil your curiosity. Many of you can probably guess exactly the topic John Kerry is going to mention anytime he gets a chance to mention Israel and its location in the Middle East and those around it. I'm giving you some clues as to what the United States Secretary of State is going to use the occasion to say in regard to what Mr. Netanyahu is intending to do to be able to gain a stronger hand in leading Israel. But let's see what his opposition says in this video report with Ben Bland.
The two ministers are the finance minister, Yair Lapid, and the justice minister, Tzipi Livni. They both lead centrist parties within the coalition and had earlier warned that Israel was being dragged into unnecessary elections.
We had an alternative, a good alternative. Instead of wasting billions of shekels on an unnecessary election, instead of bringing the economy to a halt, we could have passed a social budget.
Meanwhile, this was the reaction from one of Israel's allies, the United States.
We hope that whatever government is formed is a government that will, or whether there are elections, that those elections will produce the possibility of a government that can negotiate and move towards resolving the differences between Israelis and Palestinians.
You know, friends, even though the reporter introduced this as Mr. Kerry as one of, representing the United States, as one of Israel's allies, the words this ally spoke, wittingly or unwittingly, are the words of, you know, the expression that says, with friends like that, who needs enemies? You know, that's kind of my thought and my takes on that. There's a little more in this video. Let's let it finish up.
Under Israeli law, the election would probably happen in March if the Knesset is dissolved this week. Israeli MPs are expected to vote on that on Wednesday. Ben Bland, BBC News.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Ben Bland. I'm sorry, folks, I had my mic off for a moment there. Thankfully, I noticed my light wasn't on, which this new switch is helpful. I might have talked for a minute or two before I noticed the microphone was off. But thank you, Ben Bland, for that report out of Israel. We'll turn to the United States now for a story. I try, friends, to avoid stories that relate simply or strictly to political shenanigans or political things that just have some kind of political impact and effect within the United States. But even though things that may have a political ring to them, if they have potential for great or grave impact internationally, I think it is a good idea for us to pay attention and make note of those things. The caption for this video report says Senator John McCain said soap opera producer Colleen Bell was totally unqualified, quote unquote, for the post of U.S. ambassador to Hungary, to which she's being summoned for an appointment. Hungary has summoned the top U.S. diplomat in Budapest after Senator John McCain described in this video. You'll hear John McCain speaking. You'll hear him describe Prime Minister Viktor Orban as, listen up for this, friends, he's going to call him a neo-fascist dictator in his address, public address from Congress today. The Hungarian government rejected the remarks, which it said were totally unacceptable. Senator McCain was speaking in the U.S. Senate yesterday before a vote on the appointment of a former TV soap opera producer as ambassador to Hungary. Colleen Bell was, quote unquote, totally unqualified for such a role. You'll hear Senator McCain say. The Republican senator had been unimpressed with Miss Bell this year when he questioned her during her confirmation hearing about what she planned to do differently from her predecessor as ambassador to Budapest. She was widely seen as giving a faltering performance. Here's the story on that.
We're about to vote on a totally unqualified individual to be ambassador to a nation which is very important to our national security interests. Her qualifications are as the producer of television soap opera The Bold and the Beautiful, contributed $800,000 to Obama in the last election, and bundled more than $2.1 million for President Obama's re-election effort. I am not against political appointees. I understand how the game is played. But here we are, a nation that's on the verge of ceding its sovereignty to a neo-fascist dictator, getting in bed with Vladimir Putin, and we're going to send the producer of The Bold and the Beautiful as our ambassador. I urge my colleagues to put a stop to this foolishness.
Okay, friends, I mentioned to you that we would have a story relating to the first seal tonight. Let me just pull our chart up again, just give you a quick chance for a review. I know many of you know this already, but hey, you know, these old brains sometimes, nice to give them a little refreshment. And the young brains that haven't seen this too often, well, good to review it. The first seal in Revelation 6 is depicted there as a white horse, and he that rides on that horse has a bow in his hands. If you look at my new cover photo on Facebook for my personal account, you'll see I've got a graphic on the screen behind me. I don't have it to put up on the screen available tonight, but I've got a new graphic I had an artist put together that has a rendering of a pope riding a white horse holding a bow in his hands. And you know, whether the pope that is the one with that real bow in his hand to finish off the last days with the appointment of the seventh and final head of the Holy Roman Empire, which, you know, the Pope always, that emperor, that seventh and final head of the Holy Roman Empire, which the Bible calls the beast, is something we can anticipate in the future. God has said there would be, in Revelation 17, verse 10, God says, there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen. We know who those 5 that are fallen are. Let me pull my chart out here again. Well, not just there. We're going to zoom over up to the top right corner of that. In Revelation 17, verse 10, it says there are 7 kings, and then it announces that 5 are fallen. And many commentaries, many people know who are those 5 that are fallen. They begin with Justinian, who restored the Roman Empire to imperial rule and with an association with the Roman Catholic Church, with the Pope riding the beast, riding heavy influence over this Roman Empire, this holy Roman Empire, that was restored after the 3 barbarian heads were plucked up by the roots at the behest of the Pope. Then he got the barbarians out of the way. Then he was able to control and ride, influence, and appoint and put the crowns on the heads of the Roman emperors for this holy Roman Empire. Now, later, after 554, sometime after that, most of these emperors were crowned in the Emperor's Hall in Frankfurt, Germany, where the Pope would conduct the coronation ceremony and put the crowns on the emperor's heads, with the exception of Napoleon. Now, the Pope was there and had the crown to put on Napoleon's head, but Napoleon couldn't wait for the Pope's words and actions. Napoleon grabbed the crown out of the Pope's hand and placed it on his head himself. And of course, as you know, Napoleon was the last of a continuous reign of emperors over the Holy Roman Empire. At the Battle of Waterloo in 1814, a battle that will be commemorated for its 200th anniversary in a commemoration that will be held next year. I showed you video on that earlier this week, and we'll remind you just before that comes up of when that's coming up. I'm sure there'll be plenty of video news as that event is taking place. But in 1814, when you see Napoleon's picture in the bottom right side there, after the Battle of Waterloo, when he lost that battle, that was the end of the Holy Roman Empire for a time. It dissolved it until almost 100 years later. Let me rephrase that. Actually, you do the arithmetic, it was a little more than 100 years later, from 1814 to 1936. Now, the stage was set for the Holy Roman Empire to be revived as of 1870, when Garibaldi reunited Italy. But it wasn't until 1936 when Mussolini invaded and conquered Ethiopia and then made the pronouncement that he had revived the Holy Roman Empire. Now, it wasn't a great revival. It wasn't a long-lasting revival. It lasted only 9 years until 1945, April 28, 1945, when Mussolini was killed and hung, along with his mistress and a number of his comrades, hung upside down from the canopy of an Esso gasoline station in Europe. And yet the verse that announces these 5 that are fallen was a future perfect tense verse, a present perfect tense verse for 1936, or until 1936. Between 1814 and 1936, there was a present tense for the first part of Revelation 17:10, which said 5 are fallen. 5 were not fallen until the Battle of Waterloo, when, again, Napoleon lost that battle, and after he fell, then the 5 heads of the Holy Roman Empire that the Bible mentions in prophecy in Revelation 17 and other places, in Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, all mention in symbolic form the 7 kings. They're called in one place 7 heads, another place 7 horns, and in another place there are 10 horns, where the first 3 are plucked up by their roots, and then it leaves the last 7 remaining horns, which are the same as the 7 heads. Both of those being mentioned in Revelation 13. Starting in verse 1 of Revelation 13, it mentions the beast that comes out of the sea that has those last remaining 7 horns on it. It actually has 10, but the 3 get plucked up. The last 7 remaining horns, they all match up with the beast, another beast, the second beast that's mentioned in Revelation 13, beginning in verse 11, where it says, talks about the beast that comes out of the earth, which has 7 heads, and those 7 heads line up with the last remaining 7 horns of the beast out of the sea. And then, and that beast relates, and they both relate to the images and the beast, the 4 beasts that Daniel mentions in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. And so the Bible tells us about these 5 kings that are fallen, and then it also mentions, it says there's a total of 7. It mentions that the 6th one is. Now that was Mussolini, and he was only in a present tense is situation. One is between 1936 and 1945 when God revealed to Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong that 6th head is Mussolini. It is then between 1936 and 1945, and the rest of the verse says regarding the 7th head that we are now looking for, one is yet to come. We got a question mark there. We don't know who that'll be, but we know that it'll be someone from Europe when they revive the Holy Roman Empire for the 7th and final time with what the Bible, with an empire the Bible calls a beast, headed by a beast, who will be coronated by a false prophet, who will be crowned by a false prophet in a coronation ceremony that's held and it's the last hundreds of years it's been held in Frankfurt, Germany, in the Emperor's Hall, which is now up on the 2nd floor of the City Hall in the Romer building, German word for the Roman building, which has been rebuilt after World War II with money from the United States Marshall Plan. And so, all right, let's come back out of that. Let's come on back here. Let me come on back on screen with you. And so that relates to that 4th seal. All right, I just was giving you a little review of those seals because I don't do that every night, don't do that too often. But that first seal, friends, once again, that white seal relates to what Jesus Christ gave us a warning about. He said, "Many will come in my name, saying that I, Jesus, am in fact the Christ, and yet they'll deceive many, because what they'll do, instead of announcing the message of the kingdom of God that I preach to you, they will just give you a message about the messenger and not tell you that I'm returning to set up and restore the kingdom of God on this earth." After the 7th head does their thing, then they commence World War III and a great martyrdom of saints, and nearly caused the whole world to be blown off its axis by having the ability with nuclear warfare to annihilate mankind. And Christ says in Matthew 24, verse 21, that following that great tribulation and man nearly blowing himself up, he will intervene for the elect's sake. Otherwise, no flesh would be saved alive. But then he says, but for the elect's sake, I'll be returning and intervening and stopping all that and destroying the governments of this world, smashing them on their feet, and ushering in and restoring the kingdom of God to this earth. That's the ball game. That's the plan. That's the message that Jesus Christ was bringing, that the God of this world tries to squelch. And he does it through an organization, he's set up that through which God says in Revelation 12, verse 9, Satan, that old dragon, the devil, and Satan, Lucifer, who was Lucifer, now Satan the devil, deceiveth the whole world. It's fun to do it the way Mr. Armstrong used to do it sometimes. He'd kind of, to emphasize a point, he'd change something. He'd say, who deceives a few people here and there, No, this verse says it deceives the whole world. And you look at the billions who go along with that major religion of the world. Friend, I'm just telling you straight out. Pope Francis is removing. This story relates to him, the white horse. Pope Francis is removing the commander of the Swiss Guards, with the pontiff reportedly unhappy at the officer's strict authoritarian style. The news that Daniel Enrig would not be continuing as commander was published in the Vatican's daily newspaper. He will leave the Vatican after 25 at the end of an 8-year stint and be replaced by his deputy. Since the election of Pope Francis, Pope Francis has made efforts to reform the church and make it more open. The notice in the L'Osservatore Romano said, quote, I'm quoting, friends, because we're not supposed to call anybody but our Creator a heavenly or holy Father, but I'll read you this quote the way it says it. The Holy Father has ordered that Colonel Daniel Rudolph Enrig end his term on January 31 at the conclusion of the extension of his mandate. Colonel Enrig's approach has riled colleagues, with one Swiss Guard telling Italian media, quote, this is the end of a dictatorship, end quote. And that was said on news of his departure. No official reason has been given for the dismissal by the Vatican. The 100-strong Swiss are responsible for the personal security of the Pope. They have served the papacy for 5 centuries, first coming to Rome to protect Pope Julius II in 1506. And friend, I have video. Let's go for that video. Friends, actually, it wasn't a video. Originally I thought I had just had a photograph, and that's why I was telling you the whole story. And then for some reason it appeared to me it was a video. I tried to play it, wouldn't play. I said, "Oh, sorry about that. It's only a photograph." And I have a second photograph. The caption in this photograph for today's story reads this way: The Guard's distinctive uniform was designed in 1905, and as you can see in this photograph, there is that very colorful guardsman uniform, very festive-looking kind of a uniform. All right, but that I don't know exactly what the impact of that will be, but it shows one thing, that Pope Francis is not a passive Pope. He's a very active Pope. I do have an analysis I can read you, I think would be good, from the BBC's David Wiley in Rome. Let's read this. Pope Francis, according to Vatican sources, is unhappy at the Swiss officers' excessively strict military discipline imposed on his non-commissioned officers and men. Colonel Enrig was head of a criminal investigation team in Switzerland before his appointment by former Pope Benedict in 2006. He was investigated by the Swiss Red Cross and by Amnesty International for alleged human rights violations during a raid he led on immigrants' refugee center in 2003. But denied any wrongdoing. Pope Francis is apparently also unhappy at the commander's refurbishment of a large and luxurious penthouse apartment for his family above the barracks inside the Vatican where the Swiss Guards are quartered. The Pope has a relaxed relationship with his security staff, knows most of them by name, and often accepts only reluctantly the advice of those who warn him of possible dangers to his life from lax security arrangements. All right, friends, a story related to Europe and the immigration situation there. There are places from which many people want to migrate. I felt this one was very well done, and it shows you kind of the other side of the story in a way when you're considering the situation involving migrants. That doesn't mean open your doors wide open right now, but even Jesus Christ said the poor you'll always have with you. But there's a way to deal with it, and it's a hopeful way for dealing with it is when Christ returns, and things will be very different under the reign of Jesus Christ and the kingdom of God. And let me read you the lead into this. We'll end with this story. I believe it may be helpful to those of you who like to do as Christ instructed us to do in Luke 21, verse 36, where he instructed us to watch the world's daily news and to become involved in it by praying about it and realizing. And to do that fully, you got to realize what's going on, and some things do touch your heart a little more than others, and this story may be helpful in that way. And I only have photographs for this, so I'm going to be reading this for you. Every year, thousands of people from across Africa embark on the dangerous journey for Europe in hope of a better life. Many of the migrants die during the journey. Others eventually manage to reach their destination. And you know, I take it back. I've got an opening photograph, but then I do have a video I'm going to show you. You're going to hear Ishmael Diabate, a 25-year-old Malian who is one of the many migrants willing to risk their lives to come over to the United States. Let's zoom out and let's roll this.
My name is Ishmael Diabate. I have Malian citizenship, but I'm originally from Guinea. I'm 25 years old. I immigrated to Morocco because of the economic situation in Guinea. First, I traveled to Mali. I stayed in Mali for around a month. There, I went to save $60. With that money, I was able to buy a Malian passport, and from Mali, I moved to Algeria. Then I worked again in order to save the $400 to be able to get to Morocco. Since I was a child, I wanted to immigrate to Europe, but because I have no chance of getting a visa, I decided to go to Morocco to be able to cross to Spain, as Morocco is the gateway to Europe. Eventually, I managed to get to Tugce in Morocco, and from Tugce, I went to the Spanish enclave Melilla. Melilla is the first door to Europe because it's a part of Spain inside Morocco. To get into Melilla, you have to climb 3 7-meter-high fences. I managed to get past the fences, but the Spanish border police caught me and handed me to Moroccan police, who took me to the Moroccan-Algerian border again. I've lost many of my friends who died trying to cross the sea to Spain. These kind of incidents happen a lot. It even happened to me once. The boat was broken in the middle of the sea, but a Navy patrol saved us. When I think about that time, I'm really scared. I don't know what my destiny is. Will I die in the sea or make it to Europe? When I wake up in the morning, I have my breakfast. Then I go to the place in Rabat where I have my small shoe repair business. I'm doing well with this work. I've managed to make a living. But I don't make good money every day. Sometimes I get around $6. It all depends on the customers. But the good thing is I'm working, not begging. I don't ask for help from anyone. With the money I earn, I am able to buy clothes and pay my rent. In good times, I can even save some money, around $80 to $120. When I save that amount, I'll travel to the north of Morocco, buy a plastic boat, and with my friend, we will try to cross again.
J'appelle des amis, ils n'ont pas tenté notre chance. Depuis 2012,
Around 2 years ago, sub-Saharan immigrants were treated really badly in Morocco. But the situation has changed since the king gave the right of some sub-Saharans to get residency cards. I haven't got mine yet. The situation has really from how it was before. In the past, people would spit at us, pull our noses, say racist things. But since the start of the year, we feel that there has been a change. As soon as I can get my residency, I will find a better job and it will enable me to travel to Europe. I didn't leave my country to stay in Morocco. I have to leave whatever the price is. Despite my suffering, I will find my happiness. I will make it there, God willing.
If you heard it at the end, he said, I will make it there, God willing. You know, friends, I felt that video shows a wonderful and splendid attitude. And somebody with some determination and exercising the laws of success, saving money and resourcefully finding out how and where to get in, where he wants to go. And, you know, it doesn't always take a tearjerker story to help us be able to pray, well, God, for people like this fellow, thy kingdom come. And if this one didn't move you, I know I said this would be the last one I would show tonight, but I've got a less than 2 minute one. I think I've changed my mind. I'm going to show you this because I do want to give you one that might help you tonight, friends, and me, to be able to put some heart into our prayers tonight before we go to bed, praying, thy kingdom come, O God. Hundreds of mourners have attended the funeral in Germany of a 23-year-old girl, a 23-year-old girl who was fatally injured while confronting a group of men harassing two girls. The young lady, your name announced in it, I can't quite say it, it's a German name, Tugce Albayrak, was beaten by one of the men in the city of Offenbach and was in a coma for 2 weeks before her life support was switched off just this past Friday. Jenny Hill has this report.
Hundreds of mourners have turned out to pay their respects to a young girl who's been described as a national role model by Germany's President Joachim Gauck. It's more than 2 weeks now since Tugce intervened while she was in a fast food restaurant. Witnesses say that she heard cries for help coming from the toilets of the restaurant. She went in and reportedly found two teenage girls being harassed by a group of men. Later, Tugce was confronted by one of those men outside the restaurant. He struck her and she fell to the ground. There is some CCTV footage of that moment which has been circulating in Germany. It's shocking viewing. You can quite clearly see the very slight young woman fall to the floor where she lies motionless. Tugce was in a coma for 2 weeks. It should have been her 23rd birthday on Friday. Instead, her parents had to make the agonizing decision to switch off her life support machine. In the meantime, Tugce's death has captivated Germany. She's been seen as a real heroine, someone who stood up to people who were effectively bigger than her, and that's something for which she's been lauded, and that's why so many people have come to pay their respects today. Candlelit vigils have been held not just here in her home state of Hesse, but across Germany in towns and cities, people coming together to voice their admiration and respect for a young woman who's been described by Germany's as someone who displayed exemplary courage when everyone else turned around and looked the other way.
Friends, there is a young lady who indeed is a hero. Even though she died as a hero and would deserve, in my opinion, the Purple Heart Medal as much as any soldier. Friends, that's it for this Wednesday night report. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again tomorrow evening, Thursday night, with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.